You're listening to Myers-Briggs Question Corner with Edythe Richards.
Hello, folks, and thanks for joining me for another episode of Myers-Briggs Question Corner, where we answer your questions about personality and specifically the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, or MBTI. I'm Edythe Richards, coming to you live from the Washington, D.C. Metro during the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. For the last few weeks, we've been talking about COVID-19, specifically how different personality types might be adjusting and communicating. I also had an episode a couple weeks back regarding unemployment during this time, which is a very real factor we're going to be dealing with for a long time moving forward. And that brings me to today's topic, feelings. Feelings and emotions get a bad rep. Many people tend to think that we have two separate systems, emotions and logic, and they function independently of each other, and one is wrong and one is right. Emotions are often viewed as a weakness, and interestingly enough, a feminine trait. There's this school of thought that emotional means being irrational, being negative, out of control, crazy, subject to the whims of others. And this is a myth that's been perpetuated for as long as humans have been around. And we see the effects everywhere, in families, in relationships, the business world, the military, politics. And ultimately, this myth has played a huge part in excluding women from leadership roles and certain professions. Now, the Myers-Briggs defines feeling as a decision-making function where personal values and the impact of the decision on people is prioritized over objective facts and logic. Now, this doesn't mean that feeling types aren't logical. They do use a values-based approach to decision-making, and they do experience and express emotions differently than thinking types do. This doesn't mean that thinking types don't feel. Of course they do. We all feel and we all have emotions. How we choose to deal with them varies from person to person, from culture to culture, and organization to organization. We can't escape our emotions, though some of us certainly try to do so. We use physical activity, we use TV or video games, substance abuse, whatever, to avoid them or avoid having to face our emotions. And that's when emotions can boil over or show themselves in unhealthy ways. And to be clear, not all women are feeling types and not all men are thinking types. Interestingly, the thinking-feeling dichotomy is the only one of the four dichotomies on the Myers-Briggs that has a statistically significant gender difference. 60% of men are thinking types and 60% of women are feeling types. So yes, there are more women who prefer to make decisions based on the impact on people, but that certainly doesn't mean that men don't feel too. In fact, emotions are actually an extension of our beliefs and our attitudes, and if we look at them that way, they're very rational. The problem is that for so long, society has told us that emotions are bad and unhealthy, so we've learned to throw them under the carpet and try to forget about them. But anyone who has been around a perpetually depressed person or an angry person knows that however much those people are trying to escape into their own worlds or deflect their emotions onto someone else, blaming others for their problems, we know how much these people are hurting inside and how negatively it can affect us. I think the problem here is that collectively, as a society, we're not very aware of our emotional landscape. And when we're not aware of the emotion we're feeling, we are truly powerless to try to change it. But that's a discussion for a future episode, and that gets into the concept of emotional intelligence, which is in itself a very broad topic. So here's why feelings are valid. We can't choose them. Whether or not the perceptions, thoughts, and beliefs we have are accurate, real, or perceived, feelings are our feelings. Feelings originate in our unconscious minds, and it's well known and well documented that feelings drive behavior. But it's very misguided to think that thinking and feeling are mutually exclusive. One drives the other. We do have a conscious mind that we can change, and we can choose how we respond to our feelings. In the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, a feeling you might have right now is anxiety. Many of us do to one degree or another. And of course you do. These are really uncertain times we're living in right now. We don't know when or if we'll be going back to work, if we'll get sick, if a loved one will get sick. So it's very natural to be anxious. The question then becomes, what's causing the anxiety? It's easy to point to the coronavirus pandemic, but try to dig a little deeper. Then you can understand what that feeling is telling you, and then you can choose your behavior. What we don't want is to let our feelings work against us. And unfortunately, that's what we end up doing when we become too anxious. We become too fearful, and that's when feelings get that bad rep. This pandemic has brought out a lot of different feelings for a lot of different people. And yet some people still say things like, you should be grateful you still have a job, or be thankful you're working from home, or lucky you, your family is safe and healthy. What we're forgetting is that everyone is different, and everyone has a different situation. How they feel is up to them. Their feelings are their own. However this pandemic is affecting you or not affecting you, I'd like you to take a moment and ask that you be respectful to others. Please don't tell people how they should or should not feel. And don't make assumptions about how they should or should not feel. After all, how do you know? The next time someone presses a hot button for you, a deeply held personal, religious, political belief, or personal value, for example, resist the urge to respond out of emotion. Pause, take a step back, and observe. Breathe. This is something very few of us do on a regular basis. And I can guarantee if you get into the habit of doing this, it will drastically change the quality of your life and your relationships. And if you forget, give yourself a break. You're human. You're going to have times when you feel wounded, wronged, angry, depressed, fearful. And in those moments, you may feel a surge of emotion so overwhelming that you won't have the words to express it. But you can feel it. And maybe that's the key. We don't have to judge our feelings or tell ourselves we should or should not feel a certain way. We can choose to accept our feelings for what they are. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you like this episode, please give it a share on social media and be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast platform. All the best to you and yours. Stay healthy and stay safe.
Thanks for listening to this episode. If you'd like to hear more, or you'd like to submit a question yourself, then you can find us at www.atopcareer.com. Until next time. MBTI and Myers-Briggs are registered trademarks of the MBTI Trust.